Due to the flick to my forehead delivered by Xue Tao, I tendered my withdrawal from the engagement to the Xianwei Wangfu. One Xue Tao, in a state of disbelief, sought me out at my home, inquiring if I had lost my sanity. You intend to call off our engagement simply because I flicked your forehead? You are utterly unreasonable. Prior to our meeting, I had rehearsed countless times in my mind. Do not argue. Do not raise your voice. Maintain your composure and part amicably. Yet, upon hearing his accusations, fury surged within me, and I found myself unable to restrain my hysteria. Unreasonable? Have I not told you that your flick to my forehead is unbearably painful, causing me to shed tears each time? Why then do you persist in doing it? Did I not apologize to you on the spot? Why must you cling to this trivial matter? Ha! An apology, I retorted, laughter tinged with anger escaping my lips. You may have offered an apology, but it stemmed not from your remorse for causing me pain. Rather, it was simply to save face. Xue Tao furrowed his brow, growing increasingly impatient. Wulong and Yunyang are waiting for me at the horse grounds. Do you expect me to keep you company here indefinitely? He continued. You merely flicked my forehead, yet you choose to cause a scene in public. I haven't even reproached you for embarrassing me in front of Wulong and Yunyang. His expression was a volatile mix of irritation and disdain, and in his eyes, I saw the reflection of my own twisted and frenzied visage. I suddenly felt an overwhelming fatigue wash over me, as if the will to argue had been drained from my very being. He seemed oblivious to the fact that after 12 years of rigorous training in martial arts alongside General Jing and Zhao Rongyun, he could crush iron balls with his bare hands and shatter walnuts with ease. In stark contrast, I was the cherished daughter of the Minister of the Imperial Academy, nurtured amidst the fragrance of literature and propriety. A delicate woman like myself was utterly incapable of enduring even a gentle flick from him. Yet, he had the audacity to blame me for his own embarrassment. Did I wish to weep in front of an audience? To those around us, my tears over a mere flick of the forehead would undoubtedly be seen as mere petulance, a triviality that turned me into a laughingstock. As a well-educated lady from a reputable family, how had I fallen into such a disgraceful predicament alongside him? The pain in my heart was a relentless torment, while the feeling of being emotionally dead seemed to occur in an instant. I wearily shook my head, unwilling to gaze upon him any longer. Since we both harbor grievances, why must we continue as a pair of resentful lovers? Enough, Xue Tao, let us end this here. You must think carefully, Li Fengsheng. We are to be wed next autumn. Do you truly intend to call off the engagement over a mere flick to the forehead? Do not act impulsively, only to regret it later and come back to seek my forgiveness. I forced a smile, tinged with irony. How could I possibly regret this? If he truly cared for me, he would have restrained himself during our playful moments and would not have turned his back to play with Zhao Rongyun while I was in pain. I was unwilling to continue living in a state of disgrace for a man who had never held me in his heart. Xue Tao stormed off in a fury, only to be met shortly thereafter by numerous others attempting to mediate: Zhang Wulong, Pei Sange, Zhao Rongyun. All were those who had played kuju with him that day. Regardless of who approached, I simply shook my head. It is not merely a matter of the flick. Our personalities clash. It is better to part ways now than to later become a source of amusement for others. I would rather seek a more suitable partner. Zhao Rongyun furrowed her brow in concern, urging me. Xue Tao is young. His temper is bound to be hasty and careless. You, with your gentle nature, should show him a bit more forbearance. I fixed her with a steady gaze. Sister Yun, have I not been sufficiently accommodating to him? That day during Kuju, I happened to be unwell, and the pain was so severe that I could hardly stand. Yet he insisted that I join them. Zhao Rongyun interjected. If you were feeling unwell, you should have told him. He is a man, and his thoughts are not always so nuanced. If you do not express your discomfort, how can he know? Pei Sange discreetly pulled at Zhao Rongyun's sleeve from behind, shifting the topic with nonchalance. I smiled, laced with sarcasm. Look, it is clear who Xue Tao truly cares for. They all know why I was unwell, yet he insisted I participate. I cannot play kuju after all. It is Zhao Rongyun who revels in it. Xue Tao, Zhao Rongyun, and I had grown up together, childhood friends. After all these years, whether before or after our engagement, Xue Tao had consistently shown a lack of attentiveness towards me. He could not even recall when I suffered during my monthly cycle or that it caused me pain. Yet, he was quick to notice Zhao Rongyun's passion for kuju, always ready to respond to her invitations. showing a keen awareness of her reputation and the potential gossip that could arise from her playing with a group of young gentlemen. I gradually understood the distinction of care. Xue Tao did not cherish me. I accepted this reality. But did Zhao Rongyun truly remain unaware that Xue Tao had forced me from my bed to play kuju solely to accompany her? What right did she have to condescend and instruct me to be more tolerant? I had never begrudged Xue Tao for being considerate toward her. I chuckled wryly. From childhood to now, it has always been you and Xue Tao whose temperaments align. Given how much you care for him, why not marry him yourself? Clearly, you two are a match made in heaven compared to me. Zhao Rongyun's face paled at my words. She could never marry Xue Tao. The daughter of a great general could never wed the heir of a princely house. Pei Sange, sweating profusely, hurriedly excused himself. And I parted ways with Zhao Rongyun in discord. The following day, the king of Xianwei sent back the engagement tokens and letter. Xue Tao even sent a message through a servant. If you do not wish to be the prince's consort, there are many in the capital eager for the role. I am curious to see whom the woman who has broken off an engagement can marry. I could only find it laughable, tearing the letter to shreds. What did it matter if no one married me? Is it truly necessary to wed in this life? As if to further embarrass Xue Tao, his servant had barely left when a matchmaker arrived bearing lavish gifts. A great joy. Master Gu Xianggui, an editor from the Hanlin Academy, wishes to seek the hand of your esteemed daughter, Miss Li Fengsheng. I was familiar with Gu Xianggui. He was a man of some renown in the capital. My father had mentioned him often, praising his formidable youth and promising future, a favored figure at court. I had even had the fortune to meet him at the inaugural banquet in the Apricot Garden 2 years prior. Just as the rumors suggested, Gu Xianggui possessed an exceptional appearance. However, his background was lacking, and even though he had achieved the rank of the second highest in the imperial examination, he was often avoided by others. Xue Tao had regarded him with disdain, mocking his looks and suggesting he should be in the palace with his boatwoman sister instead of pursuing scholarly honors. In hindsight, I should have seen it clearly then. Xue Tao had never held any genuine feelings for me, and we were entirely different kinds of people. I had been discontent with his frivolous behavior and had defended Gu Xianggui when he had spoken ill of him. For 3 months, Xue Tao ignored me completely. Regardless of how lowly, I stooped to seek his attention. Interestingly, Zhao Rongyun later mentioned Gu Xianggui in front of him, remarking on his humble origins and how he was only distinguished by his knowledge and talent, unlike someone of his stature. Xue Tao's expression darkened, and he turned to Zhao Rongyun, feigning a playful demeanor. Oh, does Sister Yin imply that my knowledge and talent do not surpass his? Who occupies the first place in your heart, me or Gu Xianggui? I cannot recall how Zhao Rongyun responded, but Xue Tao's gaze, demeanor, and tone were etched in my memory, lingering long after. That was a side of him that would never be displayed before me. I consoled myself that Zhao Rongyun would soon be wed, and my bond with Xue Tao was no less than hers. Without her interceding between us, I believed that one day I would take her place and become the object of Xue Tao's affections. Yet that was merely self-deception. Xue Tao could endure 3 months of silence to torment me, but would never allow Zhao Rongyun to see his lesser side. The contrast between feigned affection and genuine love, between superficiality and profound devotion, became increasingly apparent. In repeated comparisons, I found I could no longer even deceive myself. Xue Tao's engagement to me was insincere, a second choice. As for Gu Xianggui's desire to marry me, what was his true motive? Was it to curry favor, to establish connections with my father, or perhaps to take revenge on Xue Tao? For reasons I could not comprehend, Gu Xianggui's face suddenly surfaced in my mind. He was undeniably handsome and charming, yet his demeanor was entirely different, cold and serious. When he looked at someone with those icy eyes, it often sent chills down one's spine, leading one to wonder if he could see into their very soul. Having only met him once, I knew nothing of him and understood him not at all. My conjectures were mere flights of fancy, no different from those of others. I closed my eyes and instructed someone to inform my father. I shall not marry someone who does not admire me. This time, I seek a husband who genuinely cherishes me. The matchmaker, having faced rejection, departed awkwardly while carrying her gifts. I believed the matter had come to a close, but the following day, Gu Xianggui appeared at my doorstep, bearing gifts of his own. The peonies at Baima Temple are in full bloom, Would Miss Lee care to join me in appreciating their beauty? Peonies? At that moment, my heart was far removed from the prospect of flower viewing. Just as I was about to decline, my mother insisted that I could not remain cooped up at home indefinitely. The familiar sights and possessions of our home can easily evoke memories of the past. With such splendid spring weather, you should accompany Lord Gu to Baima Temple to admire the peonies. With a golden carriage leading the way, I found myself in the company of Gu Xiangue at Baima Temple. He had meticulously arranged everything, and upon our arrival, the abbot awaited us. Having received word of our coming, I initially thought I lacked the inclination to enjoy the flowers. However, the abbot and Gu Xiangue engaged in delightful conversation, captivating my attention. I found myself engrossed, offering a few thoughts here and there, and remarkably, I spent the entire day without a single thought of Xue Tao or Zhao Rongyun. As we prepared to leave, Gu Xiangue unexpectedly inquired, "Did you enjoy today?" I turned to him. His gaze remained steadfast, no longer icy but rather focused, as if I were the sole occupant of his thoughts, and he was solely concerned with my happiness. Xue Tao had never shown such consideration for my feelings. In retrospect, I scarcely ever felt joy. Zhao Rongyun delighted in activities such as kuju, horse racing, archery, and throwing pots, and Xue Tao would always take me to the racecourse, the western suburbs, the archery range, and the taverns. I was inept at kuju, consistently placed last in horse races, struggled to draw the bowstring for archery. And while throwing pots was somewhat enjoyable, Xue Tao always graciously ceded victory to Zhao Rongyun. Thus, I never found true happiness in those outings. Xue Tao was indifferent to my emotions. As long as Zhao Rongyun was pleased, he was content. How long had it been since I quietly enjoyed the company of someone with whom I shared a like mind, sipping tea and admiring flowers? It seemed that ever since I developed feelings for Xue Tao, I had stifled my own desires, presenting a compliant facade to cater to his whims. The peonies are resplendent, and the tea is exquisite. I indeed find joy in this. I nodded to Gu Xiangue, hesitated for a moment, and then asked, "And you? Are you happy?" He evaded the question, silently gazing at me, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his eyes. "The cuisine at the Peony Pavilion in Baima Temple is quite delightful. I shall come to escort you there." Gu Xiangue's invitation to view the flowers was no secret. The entirety of Suzuka Street witnessed the esteemed Lord Gu of the Hamlin Academy escorting the daughter of the National University's Chancellor to Baima Temple. Upon hearing of this the next day, Xue Tao stormed into my home, fury etched across his face. "Li Fengsheng, why must you choose Gu Xiangue of all people? Are you not aware that he is the one I loathe most? Even if you seek to provoke my attention, you needn't resort to such distasteful tactics. And you still want to admire the peonies with him?" He scoffed derisively. "Peonies. Does he even deserve such admiration?" A barrage of contemptuous questions rained upon me, a tempest that threatened to obliterate my composure. Anger surged within me, and I closed my eyes, striving to suppress my indignation. "We are no longer engaged. Whom I choose to marry is no concern of yours, and you needn't feel disgusted. The peonies at Baima Temple do not discriminate between rich and poor. Even a beggar can find joy in their beauty, let alone someone as extraordinary as Lord Gu." I shot him a cold glare, deliberately aiming to pierce his heart with my words. No matter how magnificent the peonies may be, they pale in comparison to Lord Gu's ethereal grace and captivating presence. In my view, only Lord Gu is worthy of those peonies. If the flowers possess any spirit, they ought to thank him for their splendor. Xue Tao, evidently infuriated, erupted with rage. Have you truly taken a liking to that rabbit? Whom I fancy is of no concern to you." He glared at me, his tongue momentarily faltering. "How can it be of no concern? After years of friendship, you choose to sever ties and become enemies?" I fell silent, suddenly at a loss for words. Xue Tao bore two faces, one worldly and pragmatic, the other almost childlike in its naivete. Did he truly believe we were still children? In those innocent years, I always stood by his side. If he was right, I would never contradict him. If he was wrong, I would never oppose him. But we had grown up, and with the dissolution of our engagement, we had become strangers. We were no longer allies. He seemed perpetually oblivious to this reality. In his mind, Zhao Rongyun would marry, and Pei Sang would settle down. But I, even after our engagement was annulled and our arguments were fierce, remained his closest companion, his joys and sorrows intertwined with mine, our grievances shared. It was precisely this naivete of his that kept a glimmer of hope alive within me. He regarded me as someone unique. He must have some fondness for me, clinging to that slender thread of hope I had endured for years. Yet, that thread was too fragile, insufficient to sustain an enduring connection. I gazed at him, no longer willing to provide him with the comfort of agreement. What does our years of friendship matter, Xue Tao? The principles of a woman dictate that before marriage, she follows her father, after marriage her husband, and after his death her son. There is no obligation to follow you. If you consider Lord Gu your rival or enemy, then do not seek me out again. I worry that he may misinterpret your intentions. Xue Tao, seething with rage, hurled accusations at me, branding me as ungrateful and heartless, bewitched by the charms of that rabbit. My father, with a stern countenance, ordered him to leave. The next day, when Gu Xiangui sent me an invitation, I readily accepted. This was not merely an act of defiance against Xue Tao, but rather a desire to liberate myself from his influence and immerse myself in a world devoid of his presence. Since the age of 7, I had trailed behind Xue Tao like a shadow. I was chosen as a companion for the princess, entering the palace to study alongside the princes and princesses. While others hailed from noble families, my father held a mere 5th-grade official position, making my time in the palace exceedingly arduous. I often found my studies torn to shreds, with centipedes stuffed into my satchel. Companions of the princess were seldom permitted to leave the palace, and I was isolated from my parents and siblings. Enduring the harshness of the environment, it was only when Xue Tao entered the palace that my endurance found an end. He possessed a chivalrous spirit in his youth, unable to tolerate those who bullied me. As the heir of the Prince of Xianwei, he feared neither heaven nor earth. And after he had fought a few skirmishes with the princes who tormented me, I was unofficially sheltered under his wing. At that time, he had already begun his martial training with Zhao Rongyun's elder brother and had formed a close bond with her. Thus, I also became friends with Zhao Rongyun. The same applied to Pei Sang, Zhang Wulong, and Song Zhen. They were initially Xue Tao's friends, and later became mine. Once I stood opposed to Xue Tao, I would forever find no ally on my side. To dissolve my engagement with Xue Tao was akin to tearing my very soul from my body. I was relinquishing not just a man, a marriage, but also all the friendships I had formed up until now, my entire life of 18 years. In moments of doubt, I even wondered if Xue Tao was employing such tactics to bind me to him. He had turned me into a parasitic vine, as if I had no worth in the eyes of others unless I remained his subordinate. When I sought to break free from him, the world rallied against me, questioning, opposing, and obstructing my path. Did I still possess the courage to sever ties completely? Yet, a world without Xue Tao was not as terrifying as I had envisioned. The dishes at the Peony Pavilion were exceptionally delightful. The abbot and I shared a kindred spirit. Gu Xiangui, though reserved in speech, was meticulous and gentle, attentive to every detail. What was merely a simple vegetarian meal at the temple, a meal that Xue Tao would have deemed insipid, filled me with an unexpected joy. Before leaving, the abbot presented me with a bundle wrapped in satin, stating that the peonies had already bloomed to their fullest and withered away. But he had previously cut a few buds, and if I fancied them, he wished to offer them as a token of spring's final sentiment to a lady. I was inwardly astonished. The abbot held the rare peony in his hands, a treasure he had never parted with, regardless of how others had sought to seize it or offered extravagant sums for its acquisition in the past. Yet now, it seemed as though the sun had risen from the west, as he was willing to bestow it upon another. Perhaps sensing my hesitation, the abbot smiled gently and explained, "This old monk merely acts as a go-between, offering a flower as a gift to the Buddha on your behalf. You may rest assured and accept it." I found his words puzzling and could not help but tease. "What do you mean, abbot? The renowned Tian Tai peony of the capital is not from your Baima temple?" The abbot appeared to have anticipated my question and cast a knowing glance at Gu Xiangui with a smile. "You are unaware, my dear disciple, that I am merely a custodian of this flower. It was originally sought by a lovesick admirer in the capital, intended as a gift for the woman who captured his heart. Unfortunately, fate took a turn, and just as he returned with the flower, his beloved had pledged herself to another. It seems this flower possesses a connection to the divine. It was at my temple that the man found solace during this tumultuous time. Knowing how much his beloved cherished peonies, He wished to spare her the heartache, leaving the flower in the temple, hoping that when it bloomed, she might have the fortune to behold it. Following the abbot's gaze, I turned to look at Gu Xiangui. He pressed his lips together, his gaze cast downward, his demeanor cool and detached, as though unaffected by the tale being recited before him, yet the telltale flush on his alabaster ears betrayed his true feelings. A woman who held his heart in secret. When had Gu Xiangui and I shared such a bond? After pondering briefly, I feigned ignorance and smiled as I accepted the flower. Yet, contrary to the abbot's description of it as a wilted bud, it was a collection of plump blossoms, ready to burst forth. It seemed he had meticulously chosen the finest blooms, delaying their bloom with chilled spring water. His thoughtful gesture left me at a loss for words. Is this truly the Tian Tai peony? I had expected something far more exotic. A jarring voice intruded upon the moment. I turned to see Xue Tao, accompanied by a young maiden, making their way up the mountain path, flanked by an entourage. He wore a cold, cruel smile, devoid of any warmth as he regarded me. Zhao Jinxiao's birthday is in a couple of days, and she desires peonies. I have scoured the entire capital and learned that only your Baima temple's Tian Tai peonies remain in bloom. That must be the last of them. Pei-san, go and retrieve the peonies for me. Brother Pei-san approached me, his expression fraught with conflict, hesitating with each step. Feng Sheng, you have the kindest heart. Please consider my predicament and break off your engagement with him. His temper has been quite volatile lately. I remained silent, my attention drawn to the young maiden at Xue Tao's side. She was strikingly beautiful, her features delicate, and her bright eyes sparkled like stars. Given her name, Zhao Jinxiao, she must be a performer from the northern regions. Ignoring Brother Pei-san, I cast a sidelong glance at Gu Xiangui. I have heard that scholars such as yourselves frequent Pingkong Fong. Gu Darren, do you recognize that young lady? Gu Xiangui paused for a moment before decisively denying, I hold a humble position and have never visited Pingkong Fong. What of that young lady? I bit my lip, unable to voice my thoughts. The resemblance between Zhao Jinxiao and Zhao Rongyun was striking, sharing 5 similarities. I thought I understood everything about Xue Tao, yet I never imagined he could hide such matters from me. What did this mean? If he could not have the true love, would he settle for a mere substitute, waiting to bring her into his life after marriage? And what of me? What was I? I felt like a mere joke. At this juncture, my heart had grown numb to pain, replaced by a sense of nausea and absurdity. I found myself laughing at the situation. Myself, Zhao Rongyun, and Xue Tao were all laughable. Was this his genuine affection? If he claimed to adore Zhao Rongyun, how could he so nonchalantly replace her with someone else? If he did not care for Zhao Rongyun, aware that I was sensitive about her, why would he even spare the real person the role of the villain in this tale of revenge? Could a person's desires and emotions truly be so compartmentalized? I pondered this for a while before suddenly finding clarity. Zhao Jinxiao represented his desires, while Zhao Rongyun embodied his feelings. And what of me? I was nothing at all. At best, I was merely an ornament to decorate his household, a tool to manage the affairs of the inner chamber. Yet now I was no longer even that. His tainted heart bore no significance to me. It was less valuable than a pile of dung capable of nurturing peonies. I turned to the performer and smiled slightly. Your name is Zhao Jinxiao? Do you have an affinity for peonies? Zhao Jinxiao, seemingly unaware that Xue Tao had brought her here to trouble another woman, looked flustered and uncomfortable. She bit her lip and shook her head softly. Every woman loves flowers. As long as they are given by my lord, I cherish them all. This was a clear indication of disinterest. Xue Tao remained unchanged, neglectful of my feelings and indifferent to this seemingly favored Zhao Jinxiao. This peony is also known as Jinxiao, which suits you well. Since Xue Tao has sought this flower to celebrate your longevity, I am more than willing to oblige. Interestingly, 2 years ago, at the inaugural banquet in the apricot garden, he gifted me 2 branches of air chiao. However, I exchanged the peonies for white peonies with someone else, leaving him with lingering regrets. Now that you accept these Tian Tai peonies, we can consider our account settled. Let peonies repay peonies. From this moment forth, let it be as though I have never received flowers from him. With that, I turned without a hint of longing, taking Gu Xiangui's outstretched hand as I walked toward the carriage. Yet Xue Tao rushed forward, gripping my wrist tightly. How peculiar. Just moments ago, he had been cold and unfeeling, yet now his hand trembled.
Li Fengsheng.
Li Fengsheng, do not do this. Look back at me. His voice was a wretched plea, as though he was begging. I will not allow you to sever ties. Have you forgotten? You have received my peonies once before. I felt momentarily dazed, a familiar pain surging in my chest. How could I forget? I could never forget. It had only been 3 months since I entered the palace, when the 6th prince had inexplicably harbored animosity towards me, cutting away half of my long hair with a pair of scissors. I had crumbled, escaping the doctor's lessons to hide in a corner of the imperial garden, crying silently. It was Xue Tao who, with a bouquet of peonies in hand, descended from above to wipe away my tears, clumsily yet tenderly comforting me. That scene had recurred in my dreams countless times. However, in those dreams, he was the hero who came to my rescue, not the true Xue Tao. I understood all too well that the peonies he held were meant for Zhao Rongyun. He had climbed the tree to seek her out, merely curious about the person weeping in the imperial garden. His casual comfort had transformed him in my eyes into a hero bearing precious flowers. As the years sailed by, my heart turned to emptiness. A decade-long dream had ended, leaving me in desolation upon waking. I turned to face him calmly, my heart like a still pond. Xue Tao, thank you for comforting me back then and for protecting me all these years. I have never told you, while the peony is the most exquisite flower, what I truly cherish are the flowers of affection. Your peonies are better suited for another. He appeared utterly stunned, as though frozen in place, and I effortlessly extricated my wrist from his grasp. It was absurd. Not long ago, he had argued vehemently with me, even striking my forehead in anger, yet now, with our feelings laid bare, he dared not even pull me back with force. As I climbed into the carriage, the copper wheels rumbled. Passing by him, I caught a glimpse of Xiao Jinxiao still cradling the flowers, standing beside him like a beautiful ornament. I could almost see the reflection of my former self, speaking words to please him, forcing a smile as I accepted flowers I did not desire, and pushing myself into another's narrative. Unable to resist, I lifted the silk curtain and added, "Your favorite flower is not the peony, but the golden sparrow, is it not? Go on and love the one who will gift you golden sparrows." Xue Tao suddenly looked up, the clusters of pale yellow by Xiao Jinxiao's temples finally catching his eye. Xue Tao had lost his mind. In the depths of the northern district, amidst the haze of revelry, I found myself ensnared in a cycle of intoxication, drifting into dreams that led to my demise on the streets. In the liminal space between slumber and wakefulness, I seized upon a passerby, inquiring, "Do you know what the flower of love is?" Yet, he failed to grasp that my concern had never been about the flowers he bestowed upon me. Much like my decision to annul our engagement was not prompted merely by the light tap he delivered upon my forehead. Not long after, the Princess of Xianwei, accompanied by Xue Tao's wet nurse, descended upon my abode, personally beseeching my forgiveness for Xue Tao's transgressions. The aged wet nurse, her hair speckled with gray, knelt before me in place of the princess, imploring me to overlook Xue Tao's momentary folly. The princess, with unyielding conviction, vowed that the Xianwei royal household acknowledged only me as the rightful consort. I assisted the wet nurse to her feet, posing but a single question. "Are you aware of the existence of the little goldfinch, Your Highness?" The princess fell silent, her authority momentarily diminished. After a prolonged pause, she finally spoke with a measured tone. "She is merely a lowly courtesan. No matter how fond he may be of her, she would merely serve as a concubine, unworthy of your concern." Her words left me in a state of bemusement, unable to decide whether to be incensed or amused. "It is not for your highness to dictate what merits my concern. In my family, there exists a long-standing principle. Men must not consort with courtesans, and only those without heirs at 40 may take concubines. The standards for seeking a spouse are naturally the same. The Xianwei royal family, esteemed as they are, prioritizes the proliferation of their lineage and likely look down upon our humble origins. A common girl such as myself would not dare to aspire so high." The princess, incensed, retorted, "Li Fengsheng, you are insufferable. I would not dare to be so bold. Marriage is a union between families, and the heir has only recently returned the engagement token. Your Highness, to suddenly declare a change of heart, such capriciousness begs the question, is marriage merely a jest to you, or are you belittling the Li family?" You wretched child. When did you become so sharp-tongued? Do you possess no manners? I smirked lightly. Manners are for hosting guests. Your Highness arrived uninvited and insists on meeting with a mere junior. Is that considered hospitality in the royal residence? My previous deference had solely been due to Xue Tao. Now that I no longer cared for him, why should I tolerate her tyranny in my own quarters? Even if I were still engaged to Xue Tao, it was unreasonable to neglect one's own son, compelling the fiancé to accommodate her wayward son. The Princess of Xianwei departed in a huff. From that moment forth, my parents strictly forbade any news regarding Xue Tao from reaching my ears. They had never held Xue Tao in high regard. To phrase it more delicately, he was the heir of the royal household, a scion of nobility, yet upon closer inspection, he was merely a parasite, a wastrel sustained by the goodwill of the common folk. Had I not been besotted with him and insisted on marrying him, my father would have had no desire to be entangled with the Xianwei royal family. Conversely, Gu Xiangui, seemingly favored by my father, would visit our home regularly for tea, each time bearing a basket of white peonies. In the eyes of society, peonies were esteemed while peonies were considered mere wildflowers, unworthy of grand occasions, and thus rarely seen in the capital. I knew not from whence he procured such blossoms, but they always arrived glistening with dew. When Zhao Rongyun came to see me, she regarded the room filled with white peonies with a disdainful sneer. Peonies. Is this what you deem the so-called flower of love? Soft and drooping like the wild grasses by the roadside, truly akin to yourself, unworthy of the stage. The stage is of little consequence. It is the essence of virtue that truly matters. Peonies were merely the flowers exchanged between lovers in ancient Chu, not meant for grand displays. It is the lack of integrity that renders one unfit for the limelight. It is often said that a woman without talent is deemed virtuous. If Sister Yun truly possesses no virtue, perhaps she ought to spend less time gallivanting and more time reading at home. You. Zhao Rongyun's face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. I feigned ignorance and instructed my maid to serve her tea. Sister Yun must have a pressing matter to seek me out here. What brings you? Suddenly, she fell silent, twisting her handkerchief, and remained mute for a considerable time. I, too, refrained from speaking, for what good news could she possibly have for me? After what felt like an eternity, Zhao Rongyun finally spoke. I am in discussions with Xue Tao regarding marriage, with the Empress Dowager acting as matchmaker. Had she not been on the verge of her own nuptials? How then could she be negotiating with Xue Tao? I was taken aback, noting the lack of joy on her countenance, and soon discerned the truth. This unexpected union likely stemmed from the emperor's desire to seize her family's military authority. Nonetheless, she had achieved her goal. Had she come to inform me to flaunt her good fortune, or to intimidate me? I smiled faintly, congratulations indeed. Pray tell, when is the wedding date set? It was unclear what taboo I had breached, but as soon as the words left my mouth, Zhao Rongyun's expression soured further, as if she had swallowed a fly. I did not come to invite you to my wedding. Then what is it? I am here at the behest of my mother-in-law, asking you, out of consideration for our acquaintance, to persuade Xue Tao to return home. In that moment, I was struck by a mix of surprise, incredulity, and amusement. Her mother-in-law was the Princess of Xianwei? Even before entering the household, she was already subject to her demands. How dutiful. She even had the audacity to ask me to convince Xue Tao. I could not fathom when my words had gained such importance that the princess could not dissuade him. Nor could Zhao Rongyun, thus requiring my intervention. Even if I could persuade him, what obligation did I have to do so? I offered a sardonic smile and replied coolly. Sister Yun overestimates my influence. It is common knowledge that Xue Tao has never held me in high regard. Why would he heed my words? It would be far more effective for Sister Yun to persuade him herself. He is keeping a mistress in the northern district, a certain little goldfinch, who resembles you quite closely. In my estimation, his reluctance to return home likely stems from his indulgence in her charms. You, Sister Yun, are the rightful partner. A single word from you carries more weight than 10 from others. Zhao Rongyun displayed no surprise at the mention of the little goldfinch. Her expression twisted, akin to a vicious hound sensing betrayal. She was aware of the little goldfinch's existence? A peculiar sensation washed over me, and I instinctively probed. The little goldfinch is indeed fortunate. A person from Sichuan, without means in the capital. Not only has she caught Xue Tao's eye, But even the princess holds her in favor, having traversed the path of approval to gain entry. Zhao Rongyun gritted her teeth, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Fortunate? Indeed. A mere lowly servant, and yet she has achieved such heights. What sheer luck. I was taken aback, astonished by the depth of her resentment. Zhao Rongyun, the daughter of a prominent general, had always been proud and haughty, even when I had interposed myself between her and Xue Tao. She had never viewed me as an obstacle. Why then did she harbor such animosity towards the little goldfinch? A bewildering thought crossed my mind as I regarded her intently. Did you arrange for the little goldfinch to be with Xue Tao? In an instant, her countenance shifted, as if a wax figure had met the flame. Once her facade melted away, the familiar features I had known became unrecognizable. What of it? Do you like the gift I prepared for you? I couldn't help but laugh in anger. Did she believe that by arranging a substitute concubine for Xue Tao, she could vex me, thinking it impossible for us to be together? Her long-term plans were foiled, as she had not anticipated my abandonment of Xue Tao. Whether I like it or not is of little consequence. After all, she is Xue Tao's concubine, so it is you who must find her pleasing. Zhao Rongyun's lips trembled, and she could no longer restrain herself, tearing off the mask of civility. It was you. You conspired against me, didn't you? We have been friends for a decade, and while you may have wished to undermine me, why incite Gu Xiangui to persuade the emperor to strip my father of his military power? I was momentarily taken aback, furrowing my brow as I replied, what concern is the court's affairs to me? And what has it to do with Gu Xiangui? The court is filled with influential ministers as numerous as the stars. Are you suggesting that they are mere puppets and the emperor is beholden only to a seventh-rank editor? She fell silent, her gaze filled with resentment as she glared at me. I truly detest your current demeanor. It was much more pleasing to recall the image of you weeping alone in the imperial garden, she remarked. I was taken aback. How could she possibly know of this incident? Wasn't it only Xue Tao who witnessed my tears in the garden? Did Xue Tao tell you? I inquired. She cast a frosty glance. Xue Tao has never mentioned you when we are together. An ominous sensation clawed at my heart, draining the color from my face. I had always believed that the sixth prince's unwarranted animosity towards me was solely my fault due to my rigid demeanor and difficulty in social interactions, which he found intolerable. But what if someone was stirring the pot? What have you done to the sixth prince? She inquired, her amusement at my pallor evident, her laughter unrestrained and delightful. Are you not aware? The sixth prince once had a fondness for you, waiting in the rain for an entire day. The memory flooded back. Upon my entrance into the palace, the sixth prince had fallen gravely ill, reportedly due to exposure to the rain. How could you? He was merely 9 years old then. Blame his foolishness. I merely responded to a letter he sent. He mentioned that his mother could make delicious peach blossom pastries, and I told him I wished to have some, asking him to bring them to the academy during his free time. Who would have thought he would be so foolish as to wait for you in the rain? Zhao Rongyun laughed, her mirth causing her to tremble like a flowering branch in the wind. I glared at her, my palms nearly drawing blood from the pressure. All the anguish and grievances of my childhood had stemmed from her. Did Xue Tao know? Was he aware that the very Zhao Rongyun he cherished was the architect of my torment? You should be grateful to me. If it weren't for me, do you think Xue Tao would have protected you? He simply feared that you would resolve the misunderstanding with the sixth prince and that he would come seeking trouble with me, which is why he has allowed you to remain by his side all these years. Xue Tao had indeed shielded me meticulously, since our acquaintance. I had not exchanged a single word with the sixth prince. My insides twisted into knots, a tempest brewing within, and I suddenly felt nauseous. I had long discerned the chasm between dreams and reality. Yet, the reality was far more sordid than I had ever imagined. Even the initial kindness that had comforted me was nothing but a facade. After 11 years of companionship, what remained genuine? Did they find amusement in witnessing my shattered confidence as I circled around them in humble submission? Did they secretly chuckle at my devotion, treating those who toyed with my heart as pillars of support? Did they take pride in my self-deprecation as I clung to Xue Tao, becoming a source of ridicule in the capital? A tide of resentment surged from the depths of my being. Rising to my feet, I delivered a sharp slap across Zhao Rongyun's triumphant face. You wish for me to persuade Xue Tao to return home? Present your face here. If it pleases me, I shall assist you in persuading him. On that day, Zhao Rongyun exited my home with a swollen face. I kept my promise and visited Bailey that very afternoon. Xue Tao lay sprawled across Xiao Jing's bed like a lifeless swine. Only after dousing him with a basin of cold water did he rouse from his stupor. Feng Sheng? It's Feng Sheng. Feng Nyang, you've finally come to fetch me. I knew you couldn't bear to part with me, he exclaimed, reeking of alcohol, the stench nearly inducing nausea. I discreetly pushed him away, barely able to fathom how I once harbored feelings for such a person. Are you awake? If so, let us return home. Your mother is quite worried about you. And what about you? Do you worry for me? Xue Tao clutched the hem of my garment in a manner that I had once yearned for, a gesture that now only invoked disdain. In this moment, I found myself wanting to retch, even to scoff. Why continue to feign deep emotions? The affection he showed me mirrored his feelings for Zhao Rongyun. It was all superficial. What he deemed love, what he claimed was sincerity, was merely the stirrings of something unattainable. Xue Tao was nothing but a scoundrel. There is no need to reiterate this. I have heard that you are betrothed to Zhao Rongyun. I do not wish for that. He interjected, raising his voice in agitation. In my heart, you alone are my wife. No matter how well I play with Yin Yang, she remains merely a companion. Feng Sheng, you wouldn't abandon me, would you? I longed to question him, whether it was to protect the companion he spoke of that he had toyed with my heart for so many years. He knew better than anyone the torment I endured at the hands of the sixth prince and his companions, how, as a princess's companion, I was despised and led a life of unimaginable suffering within the palace. He was acutely aware that the root of all my misfortunes was that letter sent by Zhao Rongyun disguised as my own. I suppressed the impulse to confront him, instead offering a sorrowful smile. Regardless of his attempts at rationalization, the truth had become irrelevant. The fact remained that Zhao Rongyun had dispatched that letter, and he had ample time and opportunity to dispel the sixth prince's misconceptions, to aid me in escaping my plight. Yet, he chose to conspire with Zhao Rongyun, masquerading as my savior. You were the one who abandoned me first, Xue Tao. You were the one who returned the engagement token. He pressed against my hand, murmuring softly, I merely wished to provoke you, to elicit your concern. But why did you accompany Gu Xiangui to admire the peonies? I knew he must have remembered you. He cannot forget the 2 wilted flowers you gifted him. I released a deep sigh, replying gently, I too cannot forget the peony you presented to me in the Imperial Garden. At the inaugural banquet in the Apricot Garden, I received flowers from you once more, and I was so elated that I lost my senses, even throwing a tantrum, insisting on an urgent new gown to match the colors of the flowers. Yet upon arriving at the Apricot Garden, I soon realized it was all in vain. Zhao Rongyun wore the peony you had gifted, a deep purple adorned with gold leaf. Clad in silver and purple with gilded sleeves, you and she were a striking pair, truly a match made in heaven. Xue Tao, why did you present me with the delicate pink air chiao while gifting her the resplendent Wei Zi? Who doesn't know that air chiao represents a charming and passionate beauty, while Wei Zi is the queen of peonies? At that moment, I thought if that was your choice, I would never wear a peony again in my life. Xue Tao listened, enraptured, murmuring, Is this why you gifted flowers to Gu Xiangui? Feng Yang, why didn't you clarify this to me? If you had, I would never have sulked. Overcome with emotion, he pulled me tightly into his embrace. I gazed at my reflection in the mirror, a cold smile playing on my lips. What a fool I was, unable to discern truth from falsehood. Indeed, I had worn the newly tailored outfit adorned with the air chiao to the Apricot Garden, only to discover how it had come to be. Xue Tao and his companions had conspired to embarrass Gu Xiangui before the emperor, plucking all the peonies days in advance and substituting them with a cluster of blooming white peonies. They sought to mock his humble origins, attempting to pass off the inferior flowers as superior blooms, yet the essence of their lowly nature remained unchanged. Gu Xiangui, dressed in a faded blue robe, emanated an air of chill, and naturally could not distinguish the difference between the noble peonies of the palace and the common peonies. The attendants nearby snickered derisively. With his intelligence, he would not remain oblivious to the ruse, yet he stood beside the peonies, composed and unperturbed, even cutting a few flowers with a hint of pity. The significance of flowers is ascribed by people. In that era, peonies were revered, as the late emperor held a particular fondness for them. One day, when poets and scholars extolled the virtues of chrysanthemums or lotuses, admiration would shift to those flowers instead. Gu Xiangui, as the top scholar of the realm, had an immeasurable future ahead. Even if he were to mistakenly pluck peonies, the emperor would likely turn a blind eye and sing his praises. The inability to procure a peony was indeed a trivial matter. Yet at that moment, I pondered, since others were intent on using flowers to belittle his dignity, what harm would it do to gift him a peony on this, the most significant day of his life? The second xiao I adorned should rightly remain in the garden, awaiting his gathering. Thus, I exchanged the blossoms atop my head for the peonies he had severed. 2 years have passed since that exchange, and now, 2 years later, I return what was taken. What truly remains in my possession are merely the initial peonies and the peonies from the first banquet in the apricot orchard. Perhaps this is heaven's subtle reminder that Xue Tao is not the rightful person in my life. Yet, despite this realization, I am fated to disappoint Gu Xiangui. I have relinquished love, but I cannot cast aside my hatred. Only when they face retribution will my heart find some solace. Xue Tao has consented to return home. I refrained from mentioning his engagement with Zhao Rongyun. He must be with Zhao Rongyun. The most effective means of tormenting an individual is to gradually strip away everything they believe they possess. However, I have yet to devise a method of revenge against Xue Tao. He is a man who embodies wealth and prosperity, and society is inherently lenient towards him. If I were to sacrifice myself for the sake of revenge, it would be difficult to determine whether that would serve as a punishment or a reward for him. While he preens himself, I contemplate this matter in depth. Unexpectedly, little Jean K stealthily slips in and kneels before me. Miss, do not believe his words.
What?
I was momentarily taken aback. Young Master Xue has spoken heartfelt truths whilst intoxicated, declaring that he will marry only the finest woman in the capital. Zhao Rongyun resonates with his heart. She is indeed the woman he cherishes most in this world. Alas, her temperament is coarse, lacking in literary finesse, incapable of composing poetry, and pales in comparison to Li Fengsheng's capabilities. Regardless, marriage ultimately bears no relation to genuine affection. Her words mimic Xue Tao's tone. I remain composed, carefully observing little Jean Quebec. I had underestimated her, believing her merely pitiable. How could one of her station survive in this world without a measure of pity? Why do you share this with me? I have no intention of becoming his wife. Little Jean K visibly faltered for a moment, but quickly adjusted her demeanor. Miss, you advised me at the White Horse Temple to favor those who would bestow upon me golden sparrows. Yet, what you do not know is that in my 8 years in the capital, you alone can name the flower I adore, the golden sparrow. This is a wildflower from my homeland. A person like me, akin to this wildflower, expends all their effort merely to exist, leaving no room to ponder affection or indifference. But you are the moon in the sky, a bird among the clouds. You still possess the ability to choose. Compared to me, you ought to favor those who present you with peonies. What do her words truly signify? Our gaze is locked, her sincerity far surpassing that of Xue Tao. She genuinely wishes to counsel me. Yet, what does she seek in return? I dare not deceive you, Mississippi. I aspire to become a concubine in the Xianwei Wangfu. However, Zhao Rongyun would never permit me to enter, and young Master Xue is not to be relied upon. After much contemplation, I can only beseech you for assistance. Should you require anything, I shall comply, without hesitation. Is she willing to help me exact revenge on Xue Tao in exchange for becoming his concubine? I ponder, gradually nodding in agreement. Your desire to become his concubine is not insurmountable. Xue Tao is greedy, unwilling to relinquish a virtuous wife, beautiful concubines, or cherished confidants. I will aid you in this endeavor. However, Zhao Rongyun shares a bond with him spanning over a decade. He would dare defy even princes for her sake. If you do not employ some stratagem, your circumstances may become more dire than they are now. Gently, I cradled little Jean K's face and subtly implied, as a courtesan, you should understand better than anyone how to ensnare a man's heart. Her eyes sparkled momentarily, as if enlightenment dawned upon her. Once Xue Tao emerges from his grooming, little Jean K will convey this to him. Gu Xiangui arrived, wishing to escort Miss Li away. After a brief hesitation, she decided to accompany him, leaving behind a letter. Peonies herald the arrival of spring, while the peonies bloom in the hall. Withered petals fall from branches, suggesting that you and I are fated to be but fleeting encounters, forever destined to miss each other. Xue Tao is sure to be incensed by my notion of fate being shallow, yet he will undoubtedly be touched by little Jean K's tender consolation of deep affection. Since little Jean K is willing to assist, this shall serve as my retribution against Xue Tao, sending a vibrant, ambitious beauty to his side. Like the downfall of Fu Chai due to Shi Shi, or the demise of Dong Zhuo at the hands of Diao Chan with little Jean K at his side. What might Xue Tao's fate resemble when compared to that of Fu Chai or Dong Zhuo? Afterward, Xue Tao languished in the northern quarters for 3 long months. It was not until autumn's arrival that the furious Xianwei Wang summoned him back to the manor with a whip. As for little Jean K, it is said that Xue Tao became infatuated with her, proclaiming that only she understands his heart. The Wang Fei, witnessing his restless state and his inability to part from little Jean K, took matters into her own hands, having her carried into the manor in a small sedan chair. Upon his return home, the Xianwei Wangfu hastily arranged a marriage with Zhao Rongyun, perhaps fearing unforeseen complications. With the wedding set for the end of spring the following year, decisions made in haste. Yet before winter could arrive, whispers of the Xianwei Wang heir's concubine being with child began to circulate. This news should have been kept under wraps, with the heir's wife yet to enter the household. The child should not have been allowed to remain. Yet, for reasons unknown, the rumors spread like wildfire. As days turned into weeks, little Jean K's belly swelled. And fearing the loss of both mother and child and the potential for scandal, the Wangfu sought to terminate the pregnancy quietly. To have a child before officially entering the household was the utmost embarrassment for Zhao Rongyun. She had long ceased to engage in social activities such as horse racing or kicking the ball, instead choosing to remain at home, engrossed in reading and embroidery, taking on the semblance of the virtuous wife that Xue Tao had spoken of. This transformation left me astounded. The once proud and willful Zhao Rongyun had chosen to swallow her pride. To endure such indignities before marriage, what further humiliation awaited her post-nuptials? Having experienced all this, I couldn't help but ponder, what does a woman genuinely desire? To pursue her beloved and forge the bond of her dreams? Only to extinguish her youthful self for the sake of her husband, becoming a resentful wife embroiled in intrigue with her mother-in-law and concubines? Is such a life truly one of joy? Can her worth be realized through her husband? Women are not inherently destined to serve men. They should not be confined to the limited skies of home and the inner courtyard. After much contemplation, I ultimately declined Gu Xiangui's proposal. I informed him that while I could agree to his courtship, if I were to marry him in a vague manner, I would inevitably regret it. I must first reclaim myself before I can openly embrace another. Gu Xiangui accepted my rejection with calmness. Yet one day when I visited the White Horse Temple, I was unexpectedly met with a profusion of white peonies. He, more stubborn than anyone, had kept a solitary Tian Tai peony as a silent testament to his 2 years of yearning. The abundant white peonies symbolized his unwavering declaration of affection. Those white peonies inspired a measure of courage within me. I began to slowly rediscover myself. At the Lantern Festival banquet, I encountered the 6th prince and clarified the misunderstandings from years past. He was a whirlwind of emotions, shock and guilt, wanting to apologize yet finding no words. He understood well that even if he sought forgiveness, I could never absolve him for his past actions. As we exchanged awkward glances, muffled arguments could be heard from the adjoining wall. It was Xue Tao and Zhao Rongyun. Zhao Rongyun was gripping him, tears streaming down her face as she confronted him about their unborn child. Xue Tao, visibly irritated, dismissed her with a wave of his hand, sending her sprawling to the ground. Her golden hairpin scattered across the floor, her red dress accentuating her disheveled visage, rendering her pale and haggard. The 6th prince and I couldn't help but chuckle at the spectacle. In that laughter, all the past grievances suddenly dissipated. I cannot forgive him, but at last, I can let go. The 6th prince's brow unfurled as he jested, informing me that Xue Tao had recently been having the imperial physicians prescribe tonics for health. And I was fortunate not to have married him. Otherwise, I would have been condemned to a life of enforced solitude. He was, after all, even more mischievous than I. With the Lantern Festival behind us, spring drew near. My relationship with the princess began to thaw, and we gradually engaged more with one another. This year, she received the imperial decree from the empress and has been diligently engaged in agricultural pursuits. lacking personnel to document and educate the populace. I volunteered to become her right-hand aide. After several months of bustling activity both within and beyond the city, I have become considerably darker and leaner. Yet I feel as though I am living more authentically than during the 18 years of my previously sheltered existence. As we labor through late spring, the white peonies bloom once again. And the one who planted the white peonies continues to stand among the flowers, smiling in anticipation of my return. The end of the narrative. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next tale.